In your Son's name, amen.
You've been listening to John Macarthur describe the hope that's uniquely yours if you're a Christian, the expectation of Christ's return, and enjoying Him forever in heaven. The lesson from John's study on Grace to You is called Transforming Hope, and along with teaching on radio, John serves as president of the Masters University and Seminary. Now, friend, if you're a believer, here's an especially encouraging thought from today's lesson. Jesus Christ is praying for you, interceding at His Father's throne. That's a glorious truth, John, one that should transform the way you and I pray.
It is pretty remarkable to think about the fact that Jesus prays for us. And that's not incidental. I know there's Jesus praying for His own in the 17th chapter of John. And that is a rare and unique chapter. It is the only chapter like it in the Gospels, in the account of our Lord's life, where He prays for His own, specifically to the Father. But that doesn't mean that's the only prayer. In fact, what that is a sample of what our Lord is doing now and has been doing since He prayed that prayer, because this is simply an illustration of His high priestly work of intercession on behalf of His people. He ever lives to make intercession for them. He is always praying for us. What an incredibly wonderful, wonderful truth. And if He's always praying for us, we certainly ought to always be praying through Him to the Father. I want to tell you about some resources. 2 books that I want you to get. First, Alone with God. Full title, Alone with God, The Passion and Power of Prayer. Includes a study of Christ's masterful lesson on prayer when He taught the disciples how to pray. The book includes chapters like A Heart Set on God, Seeking the Lord in Secret, Praying for the Right Things, Praying for the Lost. Rich lessons on prayer. Again, the book title, Alone with God. And then a second book, At the Throne of Grace. It's not a book on prayer, it's a book of prayers. It's prayers on every page, prayers that I prayed through the years before the congregation of Grace Community Church on Sunday mornings, as I always do. And they're tied to Scripture passage. Every Sunday I read a passage and pray on behalf of the people as we come before the Lord in worship. These books will really have a dramatic effect on your prayer life, and I want you to get them. Alone with God, The Passion and Power of Prayer, and At the Throne of Grace, a book of prayers. A limited time, of course, both of them, along with nearly everything else we sell, available 25% off the regular price. Place your order today.
This sale is an ideal time to get your friends and loved ones those gifts that will encourage them spiritually. Order a copy of Alone with God, At the Throne of Grace, or any other Bible-related resource as you contact us today. Call our toll-free number, 1-800-55-GRACE, or go to our website, gty.org. You can get the 2 books on prayer that John mentioned. Again, the titles, Alone with God and At the Throne of Grace, as well as John's CD study, commentaries, and Macarthur study Bibles. All of those are 25% off the regular price. Call now to order yours. The toll-free number, easy to remember, is 800-55-GRACE. Or shop online at gty.org. And then, friend, thank you, too, for remembering that your support helps us take John's verse-by-verse teaching to folks all across the globe, from Southern California to Southeast Asia and beyond. Partner with us. Mail your tax-deductible donation to Grace to You. Post Office Box 4000, Panorama City, California, 91412. You can also make a one-time donation or set up a convenient reoccurring donation online by visiting gty.org or when you call 800-55-GRACE. On behalf of John Macarthur and the entire staff, I'm Carl Miller, thanking you for tuning in today. Please come back tomorrow as John will continue looking at the glorious future awaiting believers and the hope that you can have today. It's another 30 minutes of unleashing God's truth, one verse at a time, on Grace to You.
Even see. The CDC calls carbon monoxide the silent killer. Obviously, I didn't come all the way to Charlotte today to talk to you about carbon monoxide. But I do want to talk about a silent killer. That silent killer is pride. Pride is the carbon monoxide of sin. Pride is the carbon monoxide slowly and secretly and subtly seeping into your spirit, suffocating the plans and the purposes of God. I'm telling you, pride is the silent killer. Pride will destroy your life. Pride will stop God from doing exceedingly, abundantly, above all you may ask, think, or imagine. It is nothing like pride that will shut down the plan of God for your life. Pride is what destroys marriages. Pride is what ruins relationships. Pride is what tears apart families. Pride is what makes you hold on to bitterness and refuse to forgive. Pride is the reason why family members haven't talked for years. Pride destroys churches. It shuts down ministries. It kills companies. Pride is the silent killer. There's nothing like pride that will stop God from doing what he wants to do in you and through you. Pride has always been the problem. Ooh, can I go there? But pride is America's stronghold. Well, you know, we got EFAM people watching all over the world right now. But how many of you know different regions and different nations, sometimes different states and cities have particular strongholds? And you ain't got to be prophetic or have a sociology degree to know that pride is America's biggest stronghold. Oh, it is our stronghold. We read the Bible and think the Bible just talking about us. Pride is our stronghold. Ooh, don't mess with me. I'm from Texas. You know, Texas really got some pride issues. We're our own country, we think. How do you deal with pride? See, pride is interesting because pride is the sin beneath the sin. Can I just take my time real quick? Let me pause for a water break. Pride is the sin beneath the sin. That's what Augustine said. In other words, there can be issues in your life that on the surface, it looks like it's one thing. But at the bottom, it's really just pride. Give us some examples, Robert. Okay, I'll give you some examples. So like on the surface of your life, you think the issue is anxiety or worry. But at the root, it's pride. Because you told God, didn't you tell him? You said, God, I specifically told you that I had to be married by 28. I told you that he had to be 6'4". Didn't I tell you, God, that we had to live in the suburbs? I specifically we prayed about this. Our house had to be mid-century modern. I told you the car had to be a BMW, nothing less than a 5 Series. Didn't I tell you that was my plan? And now you're anxious and you're upset because you're 38. And you're not married. Or you are, but he's 5'2". And you don't got the house or the career that you wanted, and you're driving the Prius, and you're like, God, what is wrong with you? I don't understand why this is not happening. And it's not anxiety, it's just, it was pride. Pride trying to tell God the way you thought your life should. Oh, I should have preached something that'll make you shout. So on the surface, it looks like indecisiveness. But at the root, it's pride. Because if I actually take a step of faith and do what God has called me to do, what if I fail? What if I mess up? What are people going to think about me if I don't show up the way I'm supposed to show up? So I would rather stay at the bay of procrastination and never step into what God has for me, because if I do, I might fall flat on my face. And I got a reputation. It's always pride. Pride is always at the root of it. Ooh, that's what's at the root of every fight in your life. It's pride. That's why you're bitter, because of pride. Because you're only bitter because you think you're better than that person. Because it's pride. Yeah, that's why you're angry, talking about, I cannot believe that she would do that to me. I would never do that to anybody. I would never treat anybody like that. Girl, I would never talk behind anybody's back, as you telling your friend. I would never do that. How could she do something like that? The root. It is pride. Pride is the sin beneath the sin. What do we do with the pride? Pride preceded the fall of man. Pride is what turned an angel into a devil. It made its way into heaven. Satan, Lucifer, he used to be the praise and worship leader of heaven, but pride was found in his heart. And not only did he fall, 2/3 of the angels, 66% of the angels fell because of pride. I came to tell you that pride, hear me, is the deadbolt that will block your access into the presence of God. But humility is the hinge upon which the heavens open up in your life. Humility is the hinge upon which the heavens open up in your life. If you ever want to see the heavens open up in your life, you got to start saying, God, let me be humble. Let me have humility. That's how the heavens will open up in your life. If you really want to see a miracle and a move of God, you start with humility. Begin your day, every single day, getting down on your knees and saying, God, I cannot do life without you. God, I need you. God, I don't know how to run this company without you. God, I don't know how to raise these kids without you. God, I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be a mom. God, you got to help me. I need you. You're not an addition to my life. You are my life. I need you. Oh, when you begin your life like that, your day like that, that's what gets God's attention. He is attracted to humility. He has to show up when you get humble, because humility is the hinge upon which the heavens open up. God is attracted to the fragrance of humility. Oh, come here, James chapter 4. What does it say? It says that God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. He resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Later, James will also say that resist the devil and he will flee. So wait a minute. I got to resist the devil for him to flee. But if I got pride, God will resist me. I got to resist the devil for him to flee. But if I have pride, God will resist me. So I wonder what the enemy is going to constantly hit me with. Pride. Pride. In fact, that's what the enemy will always tell you. Do you, boo? Do you? Pride.
Disproportionate amount of deaths that are going on amongst people of color. I know there are a lot of reasons for that, but to people who are stressed out from being isolated, staying in the house, grieving, didn't get to say goodbye to their mothers or fathers or aunts or uncles or wives. There's a lot of trauma going on right now. What do you say to those people?
Well, I mean, there is a great deal of trauma, and as you've outlined and we've spoken personally, we've all have our individual traumas that we live through. But I tell people that in this climate that we're in, we have to do three things. We have to come out physically, emotionally, and spiritually healthier than we were when we went in. And I try to do that by finding time to make sure that I am a better me. And there are a bunch of things that we always said that we would do if we had more time. Right. Now, God has given us that time. God has said, you have to slow down. And this is the time whereby you get yourself back on track. You rejuvenate. For me, I spent 250,000 air miles last year, traveling all around the world, just as you. But this was the time, and the time for me to sit down. I have a 14-year-old daughter and 16-month-old twins, a beautiful wife. And we didn't have a choice. He didn't give us a choice. And so for those people who are going through those trauma, I challenge you to make sure that you come out stronger, but also spend some time developing a passion and living for something else. Far too often we find ourselves living for ourselves. And for me, I found it more purposeful if I begin to live for others. And so my father I see things through the lens of the civil rights movement. My father used to live for Emmett Till. He was a part of the Emmett Till generation. And for me, I live for not just my twins, but I live for so many whose lives were cut short, either because of systemic reasons or whose life was cut short through death. So I find myself living for them. And during this time, I find myself more purposeful and intentional about becoming healthier because I have to live for them.
You know, when I started reading the book, I didn't know exactly what to expect. Let's start, first of all, why the title?
So that's a good question. I try to give emphasis to the word country because I'm a country boy. My son is just as country as I am. At 16 months old, whenever we go out in the stroller, he's already taking his socks and shoes off. He just wants to walk around barefoot. But I'm a country boy, and I think that there is some theory or belief that there is a culture of anti-intellectualism in the rural South, and I wanted to disabuse people of that notion. We too are brilliant thinkers, are articulate, and contribute to the world's purview. And so I wanted to just talk about country and give that some meaning. That was first. But also when you go through the rural South and you travel, what once were bubbling economies are now vanishing before your eyes. Those main streets that used to be littered with stores and vibrant are now closed and shuttered. And then this is the most important, Bishop, from the 50,000 foot view. We all believe in those not so tangible ideals that this country promises us. Pursuit of love, justice, happiness, liberty. And those things appear to be vanishing before our eyes. And so I wanted us to set out to reclaim what is slowly disappearing. I
want to encourage the audience. You have to get this book. It's going to really blow your mind. It's a lot more than what you would think. Don't be intimidated, black, white, or brown. You will learn a lot in this book. I think that you use your life as a lens through which we can see the broader needs in our country. And so it's not just about Bakari Sellers. It's about a worldview, a point of view that everybody is not privy to. And even those of us that are of color, your eyes kind of give us a lens of culture and context and explain so many things. But before we get to the heavy part, there were moments in the book that I thought I was reading Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings." Because there was a scene in her book that I remember reading as a boy that had me on the floor laughing hysterically. And there were a couple of moments where you talked about things in the book that I literally giggled while I was reading the book because I thought they were so funny. And one of them is your mother's insistence that there is a difference between being Southern and being country.
Correct.
Yeah. I've never heard that before. So I want you to explain that to me.
My mother is sophisticated. Okay. And my mother gave a great deal of sophistication to being Southern.
Right.
She gave backwoods and Bama to being country.
Okay.
So I give all of those words some uplift. But my mother is someone who was the daughter, and you would appreciate this. She was the daughter of a Baptist minister in Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
Olivet Baptist Church, where the great Whalum's pastor now, where it was the church where my grandfather once pastored, and he was my grandfather's best friend in the world was Ben Hooks. And yes. So I grew up in that area, and she grew up with this level of sophistication. And she married this country boy from Denmark, South Carolina. A lot like my wife treats me now. She says she upgraded me a whole lot, like Beyonce talks about. And so she wanted her kids to be able to go out in the world, being from the country, but have this level of sophistication. And so, my mom is a hero throughout this book. She's one of the heroes that we talk about. And she used to get on us a lot to make sure that we weren't necessarily country, although I'd give it a positive meaning in the book.
You went to church twice on Sundays.
It would drive me crazy when I would visit my grandparents. I mean, with all due respect, Bishop, that's a lot of church. And when we would visit our grandparents, my grandmother was AME, and we went to Bethel AME in the early service. And then my grandfather was Baptist, and we went to Rome Baptist. And finally, when we became of some age, it's amazing. We settled. I grew up Episcopalian. We settled on a church on the campus of an HBCU, Voorhees College. And my mom used to, I was an acolyte in the church. Mm-hmm. So I had to get there early every Sunday. And my mom on Saturday, she was the one who went and put the flowers on the altar, and she printed the programs. And so we used to laugh. You'll get a kick out of this. Neither one of my parents could sing. And we would have to sing from the hymnals. And my father always sings falsetto because he thinks he's Philip Bailey. So he's one of those people in the church pews that ain't the best singer, but we try. We try.
You know, you talked about that, and you talked about one time serving communion. And a little bit of communion, it was real wine in the Episcopalian church.
Yes, yes.
So the little boys took the communion, what was left over of the wine, and drank it and swished their mouths out with the holy water. And I screamed. I don't know why it just took me out. It just took me out. It's really funny.
Well, you know, there was no question that after I was an acolyte and after church, we took good long naps because we had drank all the leftover wine. We went home, and I never knew why I was so tired after service, but we took our naps. But that's how we grew.
Think like that. Why can't he be open-minded like me? What you got for Gloria, CLO?
Well, open-minded. Your husband is thinking where you been to get this new stuff, cause he got some new stuff.
And she didn't think that.
Well, she didn't accuse him of cheating when he did.
She just thought it
But
was
see,
cool.
she ain't stupid though.
He's stupid. He's stupid.
Yeah, because the change means something. That's right.
See, look.
That's right.
See, it's two different kinds of stupid in this.
Mm-hmm.
He's stupid for exposing what he done learned somewhere. She's stupid for not recognizing the new learned lesson. So it's two stupids here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Then he dumber, accusing her of cheating. Where you get these new moves from? I know where I got mine from. Where you get yours from? See how that's the stupidity.
Like it's a store.
So I'm not saying any of this is happening to the lady that wrote the letter, but I'm saying there's a lot of stupid going on in this letter, though.
Mm-hmm.
Gloria and Gloria old, cause don't nobody name their kid Gloria no more.
What would her name be today?
Gloria.
Come on.
Glokesherus.
That's hard to say. What is it?
Glokesherus.
Glokesherus.
Yeah. Thank you, CLO. Coming up at the top
Gloria.
of the hour, a special news update right after this.
You're listening to the Steve Harvey Morning Show.
Paper Ghosts is a true crime podcast investigating the mysterious disappearance and brutal, unsolved murder of Tammy Zawicki.
They just kept telling us from the beginning, she'll be back, she'll be back.
We had no clue where she was. Didn't know where to begin looking.
Tammy's story shocked the nation. The deeper I searched, the more troubling things I found.
The best lead, the best evidence, the best witness was blown off.
Listen to Paper Ghosts on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
When my daughter ran off to hop trains, I was terrified I'd never see her again. So I followed her into the train yard.
This is what it sounds like inside the boxcar.
And into the city of the rails. There I found a surprising world, so brutal and beautiful that it changed me. But the rails do that to everyone.
There is another world out there, and if you want to play with the devil, you're going to find him there in the rail yards.
I'm Danelle Morton. Come with me to find out what waits for us in the City of the Rails. Listen to City of the Rails on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or cityoftherails.com.
In 1967, Joseph Stalin's only daughter flees Russia for her new home, America.
Hello to everybody. I am very happy to be here.
That story alone is worthy of a podcast, but Svetlana is about what comes next, and it's the craziest story I've ever heard. It has KGB agents, a Frank Lloyd Wright commune, weird sex stuff, 3 Olgas, 2 Svetlanas, and 1 neurotic gay playwright. That's me. Listen to Svetlana on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The science, that's not driving the decisions. I asked him, is there an end game in place, which is, do we have definitions laid down for when the pandemic is now of of sufficient lack of severity that it's over, so to speak, and we can go back to normal life? Is there even a conceptual framework within which that might occur? And the answer to that was no, there's not that as well. And so it was one of the most shocking conversations I think I've ever had in my life, in some sense, because I'm not a cynic about the political process. I think that cheap cynicism about politics is it's an abdication of civic responsibility, and it's bitterness masquerading as wisdom. But then when I heard that the situation at the highest levels of governance was more cynical and less responsible than I could have even imagined, and that even when I pushed that interpretation to see if I was misinterpreting, the answer I received was a definitive no. It's as bad as you think or worse. And I didn't really know what to make of that in the aftermath of the conversation because, well, for all the reasons that we're discussing, it's like, well, have things really got to the point where we don't use parliamentary process? We're violating the Canadian Charter of Bill of Rights. The press is so involved in collusion that they won't even report on it, and they're being subsidized to a great degree by the government in some sense for doing so, and that's so widespread that it covers the entire legacy media, let's say. It's like, it sounds conspiratorial in the deepest sense. And
that's why a lot of people have gone that route, is because they have been almost pushed in that route. And you see the government then using their polling, here they are out advertising, you've got to get vaccinated on the television, and they're actually even doing ads for children and trying to talk to children directly through a public ad. So they're feeding off themselves. They're creating enough fear so that they'll get the poll they want to get.
That's the other thing that I see happening, and this is partly why this process is so dangerous, is first of all, it's very, very difficult to poll people and get a read on really what they want. And that's why we don't have direct democracy by the people. We don't want fear and whim and impulsivity that's not thought through carefully to be the basis for governance. So really what's happened, we could say in some sense, is that by circumventing the parliamentary process and abdicating responsibility for complex multi-level decision-making, we've reverted to something like the most primordial form of whim rule by mob, and that's all mediated through opinion polls. That's been the alternative to the parliamentary process.
The other thing perhaps that a lot of Canadians don't acknowledge and recognize, and Canadians are very wonderful people and very nice people and very trustworthy of their governments, okay? And so what has happened in the last 40 years, they have not noticed because we have not been civically involved like we should. I say in all my public meetings, the level of good democracy is directly related to the amount of civic involvement.
Right.
The less civic involvement, the less democracy. And this is what's happened in Canada.
Yeah, well, that cheap cynicism interferes with that too. And what that means is that because people are cynical and they think that's wisdom, then they abandon these institutions. And then when they're abandoned, that means that maybe the people who shouldn't be running them are able to run them, and then the whole thing gets corrupted from the bottom up. And that's happening. I see that happening with school boards in particular. It's absolutely appalling.
It's happening all over the place. And the Parliament of Canada is not the Parliament that you and I grew up with, okay? Where the MP had really significant power, where the parliamentary committee had really significant power. And this is true in all the provinces as well. There's been a gradual shift of power from the Parliament, first to the Cabinet, and now to the First Minister's office, both in all the provinces and in the Government of Canada. Donald J. Savoy has written a book on this called Democracy in Canada, the Disintegration of Our Institutions. It's only a couple of years old. It's a haunting book, but he's one of the experts in governance in Canada, and he's a scholar at the University of Moncton. And this is more or less his epic book. He's written quite a few books on this over the years. And this is a book that every thinking Canadian should read because it methodically and intelligently deals with how over time, without a shot being fired, the movement of power from where it should reside in the Parliament all the way to the Prime Minister's office and the Premier's office. And this, therefore, this situation in early 2020, we were very vulnerable to this kind of thing happening by governments because we have been led into that kind of atmosphere over time with power shifting and therefore exercise of power quickly by the executive rather than by the Parliament.
Okay, so we've outlined to some degree what it means if the challenge that you're proposing to mount fails, and what it'll mean is that what's happening now with the centralization of power and the circumventing of the parliamentary process and the reliance, let's say, on opinion polls and whim and the abdication of responsibility for governing to so-called experts who are unidimensional in their viewpoint, that's the status quo, and that's becoming more and more the norm.
This episode was sponsored by ZocDoc. No one knows what you're looking for in a doctor better than you, and no one's better at giving you the tools to find that perfect doctor than ZocDoc. Finding and booking the right doctor doesn't need to be a nightmare. Will they take your insurance, understand your needs, or be available when it's convenient? ZocDoc makes answering yes to all of the above as easy as possible. ZocDoc is a free app that shows you patient-reviewed doctors, takes your insurance, and they are available when you need them. It takes your insurance and lets you choose a time slot for an in-person or video consultation. Go to ZocDoc.com/JBP and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/JBP. This episode was sponsored by Relief Band. Nausea can happen at the worst possible times. It's one of the unpleasant experiences that can completely incapacitate you wherever you are. Relief Band is the #1 FDA-cleared anti-nausea wristband that has been clinically proven to quickly relieve and prevent nausea and vomiting. They even have the Relief Band Sport for the more adventurous listeners, which is waterproof and compatible with Apple or Android watches. It's a band you wear rather than a pill you take, so there are 0 side effects. Relief Band makes a great gift for any time of year. Right now, they've got an exclusive offer just for JBP listeners. Go to reliefband.com and use promo code JBP. You'll receive 20% off plus free shipping and a no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee. So head to reliefband.com and use our promo code JBP for 20% off plus free shipping.
I don't understand what'll happen if you win. I mean, because if you win, it means that that the laws that have governed us for the last, let's say, year, 2 years, accepting that.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and you're listening to the Bible in a Year podcast, where we encounter God's voice and live life through the lens of Scripture. The Bible in a Year podcast is brought to you by Ascension. Using the Great Adventure Bible timeline, we'll read all the way from Genesis to Revelation, discovering how the story of salvation unfolds and how we fit into that story today. This is day 38. Let's keep on going. We'll be reading today from Exodus chapter 19 and 20, from Leviticus chapter 13, and also Psalm 74. Chapter 19 and 20, we're going to continue journeying with the people of Israel, especially as the Lord reveals himself even more deeply and entering into the covenant with Moses and with the people of Israel. But before that, the Bible translation that I am using is the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition. I'm using the Great Adventure Bible from Ascension, and you can follow along if you have that Bible, or any Bible really. You can also download the reading plan. You can go to ascensionpress.com/Bible in a year and just simply get it for free, and you can follow along every single day. Not only can you follow along, you can also kind of look ahead and see, where are we going? I think sometimes it's really helpful to look at the map before you get there. And sometimes for me, that Bible reading plan is like a map, and I can see, okay, here's where we are, here's where we've been, here's where we're going to go. That can be really helpful. We're going to keep on trucking along as we read from Exodus chapter 19 and 20. Exodus chapter 19 and 20. On the 3rd new moon, after the sons of Israel had gone forth out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. And when they set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, they encamped in the wilderness. And there Israel encamped before the mountain. And Moses went up to God, and the Lord God called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my own possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words which the Lord had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. Then Moses told the words of the people to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people, and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready by the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And you shall set bounds for the people round about, saying, Take heed that you do not go up into the mountain, or touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot. Whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they will come up to the mountain. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, Be ready by the third day. Do not go near a woman. On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud upon the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. And they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln. And the whole mountain quaked greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, to the top of the mountain. And the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up, and the Lord said to Moses, Go down, and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out upon them. And Moses said to the Lord, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself charged us, saying, Set bounds about the mountain, and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, Go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of that house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor, and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your manservant or your maidservant, or your cattle, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or his maidservant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now, when all the people perceived the thunder and the lightning, and the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood afar off and said to Moses, You speak to us, and we will hear, but let not God speak to us, lest we die." And Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, and that the fear of him may be before your eyes, that you may not sin." And the people stood afar off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the people of Israel, You have seen for yourselves that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make for yourselves gods of gold. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. And if you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stones, for if you wield your tool upon it, you profane it. And you shall not go up by steps to my altar, that your nakedness be not exposed on it." The book of Leviticus, chapter 13.
You're going to feel really different than if you think they're challenging you or coaching you or loving on you. We have the power, the one power we have. You know, if you really want to be inspired during this time and you're having a real rough time, go pick up Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, one of the classic books of all time. And here's a man who literally was captured, put in Auschwitz, witnessed his family being taken from him, murdered, survived all that, but what he learned to do was create what we call a compelling future. He came up with enough reasons. His belief was, you can take my clothes, you can take my food, but you can never take away my ability to have the freedom to think and feel what I want. If you can do that in the middle of Auschwitz, you and I can do it wherever we are in the world during this difficult time. You know, there's a whole generation, we call them the Great Generation. Why? Because they faced the biggest challenges people could imagine. Life as they knew it looked like it could be extinguished by Hitler. And yet that generation rose to the occasion, and we have that opportunity now. It's like we don't usually grow unless we have to. Some people grow because that's their way of being. But if we want to go to the next level, we got to take this challenge on.
You know, the other day I was talking to my father, and my dad's a man of few words, and normally, yes. And this is actually our first holiday season that we won't be together as a family just due to the border closures. My parents live up in Canada. And so at the beginning, there was just a moment of frustration, and we were both venting a bit. And I was like, "Pops, I miss you." And he's like, "I miss you too." And I said, "Dad," I said, like, "what's been a gift for you and Mom during COVID and during this time?" And he's like, you know, he thought about it, and he's like, we've slowed down. He said, many times your mom and I will just sit on the patio and we'll watch the clouds goes by. He says, I have more pictures of clouds than I ever have in my life. And I said, Dad, I said, I can relate. I said, many times I said, if we're having breakfast outside, we'll just linger that much longer, or if we're saying grace, we'll hold each other's hands and feel the breeze on our face, or watch the birds, like just simple things, our pup like playing in the water or whatever. And there was just this sweet moment of exchange. And here my mind at the beginning of the conversation was looking at, what couldn't be or how I couldn't be with my father. And all of a sudden, my dad was sharing just the beauty of his state of being and the connection that my mom and daddy have had, over these last number of months. He's like, my whole life I've been pushing and I've been going and, feeling so responsible. And he says, this is force the hand. And he's like, your mom and I, sometimes we'll just sit and watch the dogs outside and hold hands. And as he was telling me this, I was looking outside the window, and there was clouds going by. And I just felt so incredibly dearly close to my father in that moment. And it just so demonstrated and proved that there's no distance, there's no nothing that can separate us. We're truly connected in oneness. And I experienced that state with my father the other day. This was just like 2 days ago. And I hung up and I was like, gosh, if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have shared such an intimate moment with my father and experienced a different state in my dad, just at this stage of his life. And him recognize that. I felt that beauty inside of me. And I hung up the phone and I went and shared it with my family. And, it just became just all day, just that night, just like looking at all the blessings and all the gifts, and actually the gift of slowing down. Even though there was both perspectives, we slowed down, and then contextually when we started to create, we had to speed back up again. But just that spaciousness of being home, home has such a different definition now. It's our home, it's our sanctuary, it's our place of work, it's our place of prayer, it's our place of play. Family. It's just become this, I I don't know, it's a different life for us all. And, for myself, when I stopped resisting what I thought should be different, I really started to be blessed with just experiencing that grace. And that moment in exchange with my daddy the other day was as dear as any moment I've ever shared with him. And we're not going to be together this Christmas, but that moment felt like Christmas to me, so.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So to conclude, let's offer you 3 steps of some action if you want to take these principles and apply them. First, just remember the principle of it's time to create. It's not just time to manage what you got. And if you create, then you will let go of the pain and you will step into another dimension of who you are, What we get never makes us happy anyway. Who we become makes us very, very happy or very sad. And this is an opportunity to become more. We're being called. And so I think the 3 approaches, some of you notice I wear this little baseball cap a lot of the time, which is convenient to do instead of having to fix your hair, quite frankly. But it has that little symbol on the front, that lucky symbol. And it isn't really about lucky for me. It's about being blessed. And my view is if you will be a blessing, you will be blessed. And so I think it takes 3 simple steps we'd like you to consider. And maybe after this little video ends, you'll sit down and jot a few notes. The first step, I think, to free yourself is to find the blessing. Find the blessing in all this. I'm not suggesting that it's a blessing that people have died, that's for sure, or that we've been cooped up, or that people have gotten more addicted to drugs, or, kids are worrying about whether they want to commit suicide, or none of that is beautiful. But in the midst of pain, we have to find beauty, or there's no momentum to create something new. And so find the blessing. That would be the first step, to sit down and make a list of 5 or 10 things, but really feel it, that this has been a blessing. And so, last year we did 118 cities, 16 different countries, some of them multiple times. We've been doing that for decade after decade. This year I've been home longer than every time in my entire life since I was 17. And there's this pull. Now I'm still able to reach people. Those first 6 months I felt like I wasn't doing my part. But the blessing of being able to have my body heal a little bit, us being together, our ability to create something new because there's a pause was so huge. What are you going to say?
And we have just more meal times together, or going for a walk on the beach, or there's just different rhythms, reading. Just taking that time. So many people that I speak to as well, and including myself, I have better health at this stage. I'm exercising more, I'm walking more, I'm reading more. There's just more spaciousness to do that. For us, we would have been on a plane or traveling or going to an event or flying back from a different country. And I don't know, just some of the simple, mundane, ordinary things have become so beautiful because just appreciating it and seeing it through a different lens and appreciating what is and making those moments matter.
And that's the value of a season, right? Why do we have winter? Winter makes everything slow down, and only the strong survive. And if you're strong enough during that time, you can nurture each other. You can be together as family. And I always say, winter, some people will freeze to death. We want to do our part to make sure they don't. But also some people learn to ski and snowboard or be with their family or prepare, create what's new because the old is dying off. Winter is followed by springtime. It's like if you were God when you set it up that way, where after the toughest times, you have this new experience of growth and opportunity and expansion. And winter's not forever. Remember that. These tough times are not forever. We're resourceful as human beings. So find the blessing, make a list, feel it, and maybe share it with the people that you love most and ask them. I've been asking people, I let them tell me everything that's horrible, and I listen, and then I say, okay, I get that. What's helped me is to find something to build on that is good. What is the unexpected gift if you really dug for it? If you really dig it, I know you'll find it. And then the second one is be a blessing. My hat, that's what it says underneath it. It says on the side, be a blessing, and it says blessed, right? It's like, I really believe, as I said earlier, if you can be a blessing, my prayer before I go on stage, every time I close my eyes, I feel presence and I say, Lord, use me. I want to be a blessing. Every